Okay, so we are in chapter 1, and this is part 2. We're going to be talking about marketing orientations, and you know, marketing orientations essentially deals with this idea that there are many different ways to approach marketing. So you have production, product, marketing, selling, and societal marketing concept. These are all different ways organizations can approach marketing. And so they're kind of their orientation towards how they conduct business as it pertains to marketing. So let's start off with the first one. The first one has to do with production concept. And the production concept has to do with this idea, make it well and they will come. So if I am making a product, then I think of how I can make the best product. I can make when it comes to production, instead of production concept, I'm making this product the best way, the cheapest way, the fastest way. And if I do that, then I will be able to save some money on different things, and that will allow me to sell product in a price competitive manner. And that's the way I can get through on this marketing ideology. Next is product concept. Similar to production concept, instead of, how you are making it, think of what you are making. So the idea here is that you will make the best darn product out there and people will buy it because it's the best product. And that in itself is how you plan to market. You plan to focus on the production of this product to a product quality that is of the highest level. Then you have the selling concept. The selling concept, we will use that to sell products that people don't typically seek out. What would be that? I don't know. A funeral plot, like a grave plot. Nobody's actively waking up in the morning and saying, you know what I need to do today? I need to get me a cemetery plot. So that would be an example. Or insurance. People don't, unless they have to, do they think about insurance. And so the idea here is that you're going to need to sell hard in order to get your product off the ground. Now, I'm going to skip marketing and go to societal. We'll come back to marketing. Societal concept has to do with thinking of how you can market your product in a way that benefits society. So this incorporates this idea of social entrepreneurship, and we will get into that a little bit later on. But the idea here is that you are going to focus on doing things as it pertains to your product and getting the word out as it pertains to your product around ideas that benefit society as well. So let's say Yoplait is an example where sometimes they try to run a campaign where they talk about partnering up with the cancer, Susan Komen Cancer Run. And so they do lids for cancer where you send in a lid and they will give money to cancer research. Susan G. Komen Foundation. The idea here is that you're focusing on a cause and linking it to your product. And it doesn't just have to be a cause. Maybe Patagonia, that's how they market their product. Cliff Bars, that's how they market their product. Whole Foods, that's how they market their product. They talk about the product, yes, but they focus on how the product will benefit society, how the production of the product benefits society, how they source the product benefits society. They really focus on partnering the product and it messages around how the product is good alongside partnering with messages that talk about how they are focused on society. So that's the societal marketing concept. The pure marketing concept is similar to what we talked about before, where you are looking at what consumers are seeking out, what consumers need, what consumers place value in, and you design your entire marketing campaign around that concept. So that has to do with the marketing concept. Now, 4Ps. This is like the bread and butter, the foundation of how marketers promote any product. What is the essence of marketing? Everyone will say to you, 4Ps. Do you know your 4Ps? Product, place, price, and promotion. Those are your 4Ps, right? And we are going to talk about the 4Ps throughout the entire time that we are taking this course. The first one has to do with the product. Your product is the core essence of, and your product, that can be a service, that can be a destination, that can be a person. The price, that's the most flexible of all the P's, because you can't, after you reach a certain point, you can't change your product, you can't change any advertising, and you certainly can't change where you're selling your product, but you could always change the price. You could always decide to put a sale on that and make it cheaper, or you can decide to hike up the price and make it more expensive. So you can always change the price. Place has to do with where we are selling the product and how the product is getting to us. So supply chain, as well as location and distribution. Promotion, advertising, etc. How are we promoting this product? How are we getting the word out there? So one of the other things that we're going to talk about in the next few weeks is this idea of CRM. So CRM, customer relationship management, really initially when CRM evolved, it came out of this idea of, I need to know who my customers are, and I need to understand how they buy my product so I can better serve them. So y'all probably don't know this, but back in the day, you would go, let's say you went to Home Depot. Before you could ring up at the cash register, they would ask you, what's your zip code? Or they might ask you, can you give us a phone number? And the reason they're doing that is because they are trying to get a sense of how many customers who live in Stockton are shopping in Stockton. How many customers who live in Sacramento are shopping in Stockton, and so forth and so on. And they might see, let's say in Stockton, they notice that, there is a Trader Joe's in Stockton, and maybe there isn't a Trader Joe in Sacramento. This is a hypothetical. And so they notice that there are all these people coming from Sacramento to shop in Stockton's Trader Joe's. That would allow them to open up a Trader Joe's in Sacramento. But nowadays, and so a lot of the CRM really was focused on getting information about your existing customers and figuring out how you could improve your offerings to match them. You look at patterns of buying behavior. It would often be linked to a frequent flyer program. So, those frequent shopper programs you have at the grocery store or airline miles, etc. But nowadays, this idea of CRM has really changed a lot into this concept of big data. And we're going to talk about, I think it's much later on, we're going to talk about technology and information technology and how that has morphed into big data and how that's completely changed how we do marketing. So that's CRM. Then we're going to get into talk a little bit about value. And so there's customer perceived value, and that ties into satisfaction, because we know when customers perceive value in a very strong way, then often that would lead to stronger levels of satisfaction for the consumer. And we really want our consumers to be satisfied, right? So customer perceived value is benefits versus costs. But it's important for us to recognize that it's not just functional value. And what do I mean by functional value? So there are three kinds of value. There's functional, hedonic, and social value. I think a lot of times when we think of benefits versus costs, we just think, this is what I'm getting for what I'm paying. But people don't only buy things based on functional value. So let me give you an example. I'm going to talk about the same product with three different forms of value and how we would advertise it. So let's say we're talking about going to a private high school. Well, we would, if we are going to focus on social value, then we would really promote that this is the premier high school amongst, families with an income over 200,000. We might say things like, all of the Joneses come here, or we might focus on how many presidents' children have attended this, or really look at, influential people in society and kind of partner them with our product. That's social value. But if we were talking about hedonic value, we might really focus on this high school has, 500 extramural sport programs. And you could get everything here from painting to, to vaulting to, any type of soccer or basketball. Or if you want to do fencing, we are your place. If you want to do art, we're your place. If you want to do dance, if you want to do, whatever you are into from a hobby perspective, from an extracurricular perspective, we are the number one in that area. So that would be promoting hedonic. Lastly, if they were talking about functional value, then they would focus on the fact that this high school has a 100% graduation rate and 100% Ivy League placement. And that would talk about, from a functional educational standpoint, why people would want to send their kids there. So it all depends. Now, every single product has all three forms of value. But some products lean more, obviously, to one type of value over another. So you say, okay, what is the functional value in a concert? Well, we're primarily going to go to a concert for hedonic value and social value. But we may not go with friends, so it may not be social value. We might be just going to a concert by ourselves. That would not really be fun for me. But we're going by ourselves because we really enjoy it. That's hedonic value. If we focus on we're going to this concert with friends, that's social value. But what if we said we don't go to that concert venue because we don't like the chairs, or we don't like the parking, or the bathrooms are always filthy? Then that concert venue would need to really up their functional value in order to supplement and support hedonic and social. So I think ideally, each business, each product, each service needs to think of all three forms of value, but a lot of times we can focus on highlighting one. So when you're thinking of your customers, always remember all customers are not made equal. You have some customers that are more profitable than others. Remember, we have heavy users, light users, frequent shoppers, infrequent shoppers. You might be a frequent shopper, but you don't buy a lot every time. You might be an infrequent shopper, but you buy a lot when you do buy. So you always have to kind of think about who are our customers, how do they shop, which ones are the marginal ones, which ones are in the middle. Then we have to think about things like customer delight. And customer delight is very, very important, because when we have very high levels of satisfaction. So if you think of it, remember we talked about satisfaction equals expectations plus or minus performance. When you have really high satisfaction, which means the performance really outweighs the expectations, and you have that consistently, that's delight. A lot of my Apple consumers really are delighted by Apple. They love Apple to death. They're drinking the apple juice all day long. So we know that high levels of delight lead to very strong levels of loyalty. So people who are delighted frequently in their shopping experience and their customer experience, then those individuals tend to be delighted. Then those individuals tend to be very, very loyal. Okay, so that's something to think about. And then you have to think about something called customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value has to do with this idea that over the life of this customer, how much of your product are they going to buy? So, for example, I think the customer lifetime value of a Taco Bell customer is something like $7 or $8 grand. That's a lot of tacos. But what it tells us is that when you lose a customer, it's not you're not just losing a $5 customer or a $10 customer. You're actually losing business with a customer, and that value is over their lifetime. That could really add up. So you want to really take care of your customers. Then is this concept of, share of customer. So how many of the customers' purchases do you get? Or even customer equity. Customer equity has to do with this idea that, what is it that how does a customer measure this particular, the value of a product? So, for example, if I am thinking about how much more I would pay for Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, I actually have to think about a generic form of cola, and then how much I would pay for that, and then how much I would pay for the Coca-Cola over that generic form, and then how much I would pay for Pepsi over that generic form. And when I get those differentials, then I know what the equity is of either Coca-Cola or Pepsi. So we also have to be aware of the marketing landscape, because in these times where things are changing, I mean, just think of COVID and how that has impacted how we do business. Even us as professors have completely changed how we do business. So the idea is that when you are talking about marketing a product, you always have to be aware of the macro and micro factors that surround your product. You always have to think about the landscape, because that is going to really dictate how you do business. Okay, so you have to think about, well, what are some geographical considerations? What are some economic considerations? What are some demographic considerations, cultural considerations? And then the other thing that we're finding is going to be a big trend, and it's going to come up over and over in our class, is this idea of ethics and social responsibility, because we know in marketing, what happens in darkness always comes to light. Always comes to light. I mean, you can ask Arthur Anderson if you think that is true. You could ask Enron if you think that's not true. You could ask GM, Ford, Toyota. All of these companies have had major problems and had to spend thousands, if not millions, to correct it, and that really affected their brand in the long run. So I think that we're entering this new phase, especially with Generation Z and millennials, where they want companies that care about people. They don't just want companies that care about profits. And so as marketers, we have to always take that into consideration when we're figuring out messaging and so forth and so on. And then we have to think about the entire marketing process. What's the model for that? Everything from understanding the whole landscape, understanding what a consumer wants, to ultimately measuring how successful we were in marketing to that consumer. All right. So those are some of the things that we are going to be talking about in this semester, in these short 5 weeks. I look forward to chatting with everyone, and keep safe, stay healthy. Happy marketing.